Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamet in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation Anshe Emet. And joining me, my good friends, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky of Anshe Chesed in New York City. We're recording this 721, day 721 of the captivity of the hostages, the war, praying for their return and sharing in the anguish of the families of loved ones, including bereaved now more during the latest operation in Gaza. We pray for them and comfort for all of Klal Yisrael as we turn to this Shabbat Shuva, and we're turning towards Yom Kippur. And it strikes me that we have lots to talk about in this very short parsha. We'll devote a third of this, maybe, to Vayelekh. I want to look at a little moment in this parsha, which is curious. Moses has some kind of text. We don't know if it's the whole text of the Torah, pieces of the Torah, or just the reference to the song Ha'azinu, but he is told, Lakoch et sefer HaTorah hazeh, v'samtem oto. He tells them, take this book of the Torah, or sefer, scroll, or document, place it mitzad aron brit Adonai Elohechem, and put it beside the Aron, Vaya Sham Bicha Le'el, and put it there as a witness. And I'm very struck by that. As I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about the fact that when you have readings of multiple Torahs, you finish the Torah reading, you Hagba Glila in the Ashkenazi tradition, you put it on the side, and you have a receptacle for it. In the Holy of Holies, there is the Ark. So where do you put the Torah? Where do you put the scroll? Is it a scroll? Where do you put the document? So I'm going to turn to you, Rabbi Chesler, and give me the comment from Jeffrey Tigay, Professor Tigay.
So Professor Tige writes that the ark containing the two tablets of the covenant on which the Decalogue was written is what we're talking about. And as noted in the previous comment, ancient treaties were commonly deposited in sanctuaries. Keeping the teaching next to the Ark of the Covenant indicates that it embodies the principles of the covenant and is as binding as the Decalogue itself because it comes from the same divine source. The scroll with the teaching was undoubtedly to be kept in a container, such as a jar or a box, to protect it against damage from moisture or worms.
Oh,
And we discussed earlier that this seems to be the simplest reading, but it also seems to kind of destroy the symbolic nature of the Ohel Moed as I've come to understand it, because the ark is precisely in the center of a square that has the Kodesh, the holy part of the tabernacle, and the Holy of Holies. And its counterpoint in the Chatzer, the courtyard, is the altar of the Olah, the primary sacrifice. And if you have an ark sort of hanging out if you have the scroll hanging out next to the ark, it sort of puts the ark not quite, it's not as centered as I think it needs to be. So I find it even more curious now than I did when I first read the comment.
interesting. Do you have the Rashi open too? Uh,
No, I actually closed it down, but I can
close
go
that.
back.
Let's go
Verse
back.
26.
Verse 26. So
That Rashi tells us that, oops,
I think it was
28, verse 26. Here we go. Um, the sages of Israel disagree about how to understand this in the tractate Bava Batra. Some people say mitzad aron brit Adonai, a board projected from the ark outside it, and that's where the like the stender, something like that, and that's where they read it. And others say that it means that it was inside the ark next to the Shnei Luchot Habrit, and it was to the to. So is it to the side of the ark, or is it to the side right beside the tablets?
interesting. The other way is the reason why I point to that is because I on my table in the our daily chapel we have a pull-out little ledge that you can put a book on. It's really
Hmm.
cool. Okay, so
They're under at camp.
yeah, that was also a really interesting
I
contraption.
also have one of those. We just bought a new one. Yeah.
You have these things where you could put storage and fill in and what else did he put in it? Do you had a Megillah in there? There's
Yeah,
so
and
much in
everything.
there.
Havdalah sets.
Yeah, it's great. You can do everything with it. Look, I'm thinking about it in a more kind of sentimental way, which is, you know, the most precious things you're going to put into your safety deposit box, right? I've had the experience of going to the safety deposit box where you have important documents, wills, insurance policies, that kind of thing, and this is the covenant. And what's striking here, I guess, is not only you have the tablets, but and according to the Midrash, you have the whole tablets and the broken tablets, but now you have the scroll, and there was the jar of manna, which was to be located in the sanctuary as well. So, and these constitute it's a reliquary, right? And this is not Judaism as we kind of know it. Our we don't make a reliquary, that is to say, a place for relics in our in
You
our.
just like saying that word.
I like the word. It's a great word. Okay. We have museums. We have museums. Except for I'm going to, claim an exception here because I actually do have a kind of reliquary in my Aron where I have scrolls from Europe. They're broken scrolls and desecrated scrolls, and we keep them inside the ark under a
Right, but
Pyrex box, basically.
there's something fundamentally different though, because the ark in the synagogue is often open. There's
Yeah,
nothing in the ark that is not seen. The ark that we're talking about is probably never seen
yeah,
because when the Kohen enters on Yom Kippur, it's with a cloud of smoke. So it's not even clear what the Kohen can actually see in the Holy of Holies. So if the teaching is being put next to the ark, it has no role in society. And this is, we're used to rabbinic Judaism where the Torah is an act of study. And here it's just an important, as you say, relic, something that we
Well,
need to hold it
yeah.
one sec, something that we need to have, but that we don't necessarily use.
The first of all, reliquary is of course a very cool word, and when I was in, Europe this year, we had some cool Christian sites, and first of all, they have like literal, I mean, whether
boom.
they're actually saints' bones or not, or a piece of the true cross or whatever, but those churches do like really just delight in that stuff. And you may remember that in the and of course I don't have all the details here, but in what I guess was like the 14th century, the kings of France decided that the papacy should be in France and not in Italy. So they in the Avignon, there was some period known by the not so nice name as the Babylonian captivity, because the people who didn't like that thought it was an exile, but the Avignon papacy, and we were in this amazing complex, and they have robes that the popes from that period like literally wore, the actual robes that the popes from, 600 and 700 years ago, I guess 500 and 600 years ago. I mean, it's like an incredible thing to see. Could you imagine if you saw what the Kohen Gadol actually wore? I would like to add, though, to Barry's observation about, if the Aron is in the Beit Kodesh HaKodeshim, and it does serve at some level to be the throne of the invisible God, and certainly in the second temple, it's there in the very, very center, but it's really not anything to see. In contrast, the Parsha also has One major mitzvah, maybe there's more than one, but one very major one is the mitzvah of Hakel. And and chapter 31, verse 10, Moses instructs them every seventh year at the time of remission, Shnat HaShmita, B'Chag HaSukkot, B'vo kol Yisrael le'ra'ot et pnei Adonai Elohecha b'makom asher yivchar, and all the people of Israel come to appear before the Lord in the chosen place. Tikrat Torah hazot neged kol Yisrael be'oznehem. Read this Torah in the ears, in the presence of all Israel, in their ears. Hakel et ha'am, gather all the people together. Ha'anashim va'anashim va'ataf, males, females, children. V'gercha b'sharecha, the marginal, the marginal strangers or hangers-on or whatever. Leman yishme'u v'leman yilmedu, so people will hear and learn. V'yar'u et Adonai Elohechem, and they will revere the Lord your God. V'shamru la'asot et kol divrei haTorah hazot, and they will take care to faithfully keep the whole Torah. Now it sounds here, and then in Second Kings when Josiah is the guy who does it, or then Ezra in his return from Mesopotamia, he seems to do something similar. And in those passages, just pshat, it really seems like they read the whole Torah Moshe. This, as the rabbis have it in Tractate Sota, it's isolated chapters from Deuteronomy. But this really does happen. I mean, I've never attended it, but I would like to attend it. Great, great big assembly at the Kotel, and they ritually read a good chunk of the book of Deuteronomy out loud. And so it is true that there are ritual ways in which this is not an accessible book for common study. But there is one major ritual way, like this big national assembly of people coming to celebrate pilgrimage at Sukkot, in which that's exactly what they do, and put the whole Torah in our eyes and ears, which I think is inspiring.
Right. What you reminded me of, so in our country, the United States, we have the National Archives, where the original Constitution is, but we don't take it out to study. When we want to find out what's in the Constitution, we get a copy. And the image, certainly of the rabbis, is that each tribe had its own scroll of the Torah, and the priests had one, so that there were more copies than just the one that was next to the ark, which could be used. So very well put.
I have a sermon brewing in my head about this, which is, we are, in addition to starting a new year, we are entering the 250th year of the United States of America. This is the bi-sesquicentennial this year, right? 2026, 250 years of this country. So
When was the Constitution? 17.
No, this says the Declaration of Independence.
Okay, so I have my little sermon here, which I might develop into a big sermon, is there are lots of things that America could learn from Judaism. And one of them relating to the Constitution or the Declaration is a Megillah. That it would be a great, and there are some corners in this country that actually take out the Declaration of Independence and read it. Although we when we read the Megillah, it's a whole formal holiday. Would it could you have ever imagined on July 4th people coming together in the town square reading the Declaration of Independence as a reenactment of that as a way of commemoration and what that would mean? And I pose it as a thought experiment only in the sense that Judaism figured this out. Judaism figured out that you take a canonical text and you make of that text an annual reading, or similar to what Jeremy said, citing the 7-year Hakel reading, which is an annual or a septennial reading of a canonical text, so that at least the experience of the text is part of people's lives, and they have the experience of it, and they're able to relate to that experience and tell the story of that experience.
So there are people that read the Declaration and the Constitution on July 4th.
Exactly.
And even Thanksgiving has acquired its own canonical text, which is Alice's Restaurant.
Well, I would suggest a Haggadah for Thanksgiving, and I mean,
that'd be very nice.
Committee produced one a couple of years ago. I have you want to hear my other two? My other two? I think America needs a Talmud, something like a Talmud, on which I don't know if the Federalist Papers constitute a Talmud, or, but something that you know a set of discussions on basic texts, and America needs a Machzor, and atonement is. So that's where I'm going with this.
That's
Okay.
beautiful. So I want to point out, first of all, I want to just note you said you know America figured this out from Judaism. So let's just have a moment of modern Judaism.
Yes.
What do we call? They could have called it the Hachrazat HaAtzmaut. They could have called it the Declaration, but they don't call it that. What do they call it?
Megillat Ha'atzmaut.
Megillat HaAtzmaut. And in on Rothschild Street there, where
Museum.
the Akrazah was, where the declaration was made, it is out there in kind of replica Megillah form. And my friends at Bina, which is a wonderful organization in Tel Aviv that I've been involved with for all these years, and we've done that here as well with them when they visit, is that we do have Megillah readings, and they have produced also your other very good idea, what they call Talmud Yisraeli,
Okay, I have
which
I would run to my
I have a
my
copy also.
yeah also.
It's got each paragraph
It's
and then
amazing. Yes.
commentary on the outside. It's very lovely work.
So I actually do a Megillah reading on Yom Ha'atzmaut. We don't read the whole thing. We read excerpts of it,
Kind of long. It's actually
but
kind of
yeah,
long.
kind of
Yeah.
long. But the point, we get the point. Okay, so we're trying to have a kind of reenactment on this, and this goes back to what do you do with the scroll? What do you do with your precious documents, and where do you place them, and what does that imagine? And where I'm going with this is that since, as you said, nobody gets to see the ark and nobody gets to see the scroll, it has a metaphysical existence in our imagination. We imagine
Okay.
it.
This is a great topic, but I think there's something else coming up this week. Anything
Got
else
it.
to talk about this
Yes, we
week?
got it. We got to talk about Shuva. So the first words of the Haftarah tell us return, but I want to get your interpretation of Shuva, and if you could, apply your metaphorical understanding of return, or your understanding of Teshuva altogether. I'll start with you, Barry.
So I was thinking about this in shul. I have a big birthday coming up, and at the same time, I just discovered a trove of letters from 50 years ago from various people with whom I corresponded, which has been kind of both eye-opening and mind-blowing, if that's not too distorted an image. Um, and so I've been thinking about a lot of different things. So in shul, I was remembering the story I think that Judah Golden relates in his introduction to Shmuel Yosef Agnon's translated Days of Awe that the Sansa Rebbe used to tell about a guy who's lost in the forest, and he comes across another guy who's lost in the forest, and he says, "Good, because now we know which way not to go, and together we'll find a new way." And to me, I think that really captures what Teshuva is about. I'm not happy with the idea of return, and so the word that came to me this year was orientation or reorientation, that the process of Teshuva gives us a new alignment with God. And we seek to begin the year in a new space, a new location, a relocation, as it were, hoping that the year will turn out somewhat better than the previous year. On one hand, we're thrilled to be alive each Yom Kippur, because that's not always going to be the case, as we know, and as Yom Kippur itself makes us understand. But we keep trying, and I think the way that we want to begin the year is in the presence of God, on God's side, as it were.
Lovely.
I'm going to turn to you, Jeremy. Go ahead.
Okay. So the turning, returning, turning, as Barry told us, it's like a kind of reorientation. I like that. I'd like to play with one kind of, this is not the semantic meaning of the word, but I'd like to play with a kind of phrase in Hebrew that maybe captures some aspect of what Shuva is like. if you talk on the telephone, you call somebody on the telephone, and nobody picks up, what do we say? Ain tshuva. There was no answer. So tshuva sometimes can mean response and answer. And we say in our prayers that God is rotzeh b'tshuva, which is God is like, God wants an answer. And maybe one of the ways in which this word is spiritually evocative is that there are all kinds of questions. There are all kinds of what's the Bible's very first question? Ayeka, where are you? And maybe the answer, maybe tshuva is the response to this overwhelming universal question about who you are, where you are, what's the meaning of your life. And if we assume, was I think the three of us can assume, and maybe our listeners assume, Judaism is a great way to live. It's a profound, profound spiritual and ethical and communal path. And so if Hashem is asking you, where are you? Maybe one of the things that we feel about Shuva is, here's my answer. Here's the person I want to be and can be and should be.
That's fascinating. I'm thinking in very conventional metaphorical terms, which is like phototropism. I'm thinking of time-lapse photography, and you see, how like in one of those videos where grass, the blades turn through the day when the sun is, directly there. And I think about Teshuva in that way, which is that we may be aimless, or we may not have a direction, which is aimless, and
No
we
direction
have
home.
we have an energy that is kind of shining on us, and we are kind of tilting and rotating our posture towards that. At the very basic level, I think of Teshuva is like kind of rediscovering that for us, and engaging in that with a higher degree of intensity at this time of the year. I also think of Teshuva and answering the question Ayeka, which is, you think about the various axes in your life, the X, the Y, the Z axis. You know, where are you located? I try to ask that question every year, when I sit down to think about what to talk about. And, after bleeding a little bit, banging my head and pulling out hair and all that, um, sometimes I actually, try and make a graph, or try and, write things about where I am, and locate, and knowing that, in the trajectory of my life, I'm in a certain place, but I'm also part of a larger story, and part of the story of a family, and part of a story of peoplehood. And coming back, and it is always, the metaphor of coming back, which it doesn't have to be necessarily. And these again, I hate to be the most conventional, but
You say that, but there's nothing. Phototropism is an excellent metaphor. Why is
what's
that
what's too
conventional?
conventional about
That's
that?
not
Okay.
conventional. That's beautiful.
Okay, got it. All right, so let me ask you this question. Now we're heading to Yom Kippur, and you know, I'm thinking about the emotional payload of this day. And what are the notes of emotion for you on this day? And something that perhaps we could share with our loyal viewers and listeners who we adore, uh, even if they're a small number, but we have become part of their lives in a big way.
We precious few.
Yeah. So give us some emotion. Who wants to start?
I think Jeremy does.
Okay. I mean,
Or maybe I'll start because because
okay.
because I'm always going last, and I have something at my fingertips here, literally. And you know what? I have a candle here. I was writing to a friend of mine who actually watches sometimes. Marty, way to go! And I was saying, when I sit down to write a sermon, especially at Rosh Hashanah, I'll light the candle. And I get very sentimental about this because I light the candle to have a symbolic presence of teachers, teachers who are no longer with us. We quote them and think about them, and their voices are in our minds and in our hearts. The other day we were talking last week about Rabbi Leifman, Morty Leifman, and oh man, where's the book? I had it here, and we all did our little imitation. And it was so wonderful to have that. And I think about Rabbi Israel Silverman, who always spoke like this.
I knew you were going to do that because I know we all know the influence he had on your
Yeah,
life.
if it's and I think about, I mean, Rabbi Frankus is gone. I mean, these were not, there are people who had influence on us. I don't know if he had much of it, but I don't want to say, you know, is a teacher. It was a teacher that was part of us, and so, you know, memory is really part of Yom Kippur in a big way for all of us, and we're remembering influence, and that's emotional for me. And I'm going to turn to Barry only because this is I want you to say what you said, which is the list of Yisker,
What the list was.
the
The
list
Easter
of
bunny.
Yisker. What happens?
Yeah. So, you know, part of what makes Yisker Yisker is that the list only grows larger because once we start saying Yisker, the names remain. They don't come off. We don't juggle them. There's no top 10. We just keep adding one after the other. And I think I'm not alone. We add people that go beyond the purview of the traditional Yisker, which were for the people for whom he said Kaddish, and include friends, other relatives that are not as closely connected biologically to us. And, with all these people on the Yisker list are also an association of memories, which I think really is part of what gives Yom Kippur its power. Because we sit in shul, and I like to stay most of the day, and we have these memories that circulate in our heads, sometimes outside of our heads, and they provide a great deal of comfort because that image that we have from Yisker of Tachat Kanfei Shechina, of being under the sheltering wings of God, comes to include the sheltering wings of those who have gone before us, whom we knew and who touched us, and whom we can't quite touch anymore ourselves, but we can bask in their glow.
What else? Any other emotional things, for
Yeah,
go ahead.
here I am. I'm 59 and I have two living parents, and so Yizkor has not. I mean, I of course have spent 25 years at Anshe Chesed, but also various student publics before that of leading. So I'm engaged in it, and I think about it in terms of Am Yisrael, and even though it's not my personal family loss. So I must say I have to work a little harder um, to have that feeling. And as my parents aged, the reality is it's probably they should I'd may have asked for
$120.
it's gonna come a little closer. But I find the poetry of the Maxua really very affecting, and and that Kianu Amecha Viata Eloheinu, the people, especially in Ne'ilah, when we sing that with such vigor and soul, it's just a
You could
tremendous,
taste the food then.
it's just a tremendously affirming um,
Is emotion. It's
moment about membership in this wonderful people. We're so
So
lucky.
part of the return, I think, is returning to the Machzor, which becomes like a good friend that we see infrequently, but we treasure the time that we spend with it.
I'm thinking, okay, Yisker is of course as far as emotion is concerned, that's I want to say to be critical, self-critical. That's easy. It's easy to feel emotional because obviously it's emotional, but you know, uh, there are other things that happen. emotionally in the whole service. I'm just going to throw this one out and say the avoda. The avoda in Yom Kippur in the Musaf uh, is to engage us in an act of collective memory about a ritual that took place in the temple that none
Maybe.
of us maybe, um, and it's filled with emotion. Ashreya ayin, glad is the eye that saw all this, right? And it there's something, again, metaphysically in the pageantry of this that is deeply evocative. I don't know if you concur or
Yishai has opened it up for so many people.
exactly.
I got to make one observation, which is that I am about to lose batteries. So,
Okay, so this is the book I was looking for.
yeah,
Abraham Joshua Heschel, The
It's
Ineffable Name of
poems.
God, poems. I wish I had one. We'll do another time, but Rabbi Leifman is in here, translated in Yiddish. That's Heschel, young Heschel. Okay,
Yeah.
beautiful.
He was a striking man.
And what the quote that we were looking for before, I have it here. Just a second. I looked for wonder, right? It was hab gebeten Wunder anstatt Glück und hast sei mir gegeben. I prayed for wonders instead of happiness, and you gave them to me. And that's, you know what? There's joy on Yom Kippur too. We shouldn't be,
Much joy.
there's a lot of joy.
So Hadar
and
published
at the end,
a
there's bagels.
collection of essays, and our colleague Rabbi Jason Rogoff's article was about the joy of Yom Kippur.
It's amazing.
So well worth reading.
Well, here the three of us are. We're going to sign off now because of waning power.
Waning battery. That's a
Waning
metaphor for
power.
something. And to our loyal listeners, we're going to take a week off. We're not going to record between Yom Kippur and
We're going to
Sukkot.
be
We'll
off.
record during Chol HaMoed or Erev Sukkot.
The calendar doesn't allow it for us, but we want to wish everyone a Gmar Hatima Tova. May all
Gmar
be
Hatima Tova and
healed and
Shabbat
strong.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you next time on Parsha Talk. Bye-bye.